Two new attacks in Europe involving suspects using vehicles as weapons. The most recent happened just hours ago along the Champs-Élysées in Paris. Investigators there say a driver rammed into a police van. Look at this video. It shows the thick yellow smoke pouring from what appears to be the suspect's vehicle. French officials say the attacker was badly burned, then died at the scene. A spokesman for the Interior Ministries tells a Fox News producer on scene there was a gas canister inside the suspect's vehicle, along with an AK-47 rifle. Associated Press reports he also had a handgun. An image here on the man's body on the ground after the attack. Much more on this suspect in just a moment. This comes nearly 2 months after a gunman shot and killed a police officer and injured 2 others along the Champs-Élysées. The Islamic State claimed responsibility for that attack. But nobody has claimed responsibility for today's, and there is no word of a motive.
The driver slammed his van into a crowd of worshippers overnight outside a London mosque. One person died at the scene, but it's not clear if his death resulted from the ramming.
10 others were injured. They were leaving the mosque after Ramadan prayers. Police are treating the crash as a terrorist attack.
The driver tried to run away but was held by onlookers until officers arrived. A witness says the man shouted that he wanted to kill Muslims.
This time, the targets were Muslims who were leaving the local Finsbury Park Mosque just after midnight following Ramadan prayers. Witnesses say a man shouting, "I want to kill Muslims," drove straight into a crowd of people. They'd gathered to help an elderly man who'd fallen ill and collapsed. That man later died, but it's not clear he was actually killed in the attack. Khalid watched it happen.
And the van literally turned left with no indication, with no even, like, suddenly, just deliberately left, and they just shot the people. And one of them, he was under the van. People were gathered around the van to actually lift the van up to get this guy out the van.
Bystanders rushed to pin down the driver of the rented van and held him until the police arrived.
No one touched him, no one.
He's a 48-year-old man now under arrest. 8 people were taken to the hospital, and this morning London's police confirmed what everyone feared.
Given the methodology and given what was occurring and what's happened, the tragic incidents across the country, this had all the hallmarks of a terrorist incident.
After meeting with top British security officials, Prime Minister Theresa May made this statement.
Today we come together, as we have done before, to condemn this act and to state once again that hatred and evil of this kind will never succeed.
When most people think of Omaha, Nebraska, they probably imagine NFL quarterback Peyton Manning, sizzling steaks, or billionaire Warren Buffett. But a group of clergymen are hoping that the city can become a place known for peace building and interfaith dialogue. A reverend, an imam, and a rabbi have been partners in a decade-long pursuit called the Tri-Faith Initiative, hoping to bring together the 3 faiths to worship and share the same property. The $65 million project was launched in 2006, and it could be the first time in the U.S. that the 3 faiths choose to worship side by side intentionally.
Some breaking news now. There's a SWAT team responding to what's considered an armed and dangerous intruder at a mall. This is north of Boston, Massachusetts. Saugus, Massachusetts has yet to be resolved here. There was a report that there was a gunman seen inside of a sporting goods store, but what came of that we do not know. Now, there is a statement here, and I'll just read it. Square One Mall in Saugus will have a delayed opening due to the active and ongoing investigation on site. Law enforcement agencies will provide any updates on the investigation itself as possible. When an opening time is determined, we will provide an update. So now we are waiting on what that update can be. Local media not allowed on the property, as you can imagine, and a designated media staging area is nearby at the Stop and Shop. So if you're in Saugus, Massachusetts, you would see that. What we don't know is what the motive was here, or who the gunman is or is not, or how police have responded in accord with that. But the story broke at 8:30 local time, which one could argue that the mall may not have even been open for the day. So we're just trying to piece this together and work through it and see whether or not, well, we'll see how much there is cause for alarm today.
Yeah, good that the number of people there was not yet high.
Yeah.
And they're staying away. At least 2 people have been killed in an attack by gunmen on a luxury tourist resort in Mali. Security forces, aided by UN soldiers, were called to the scene, eventually rescuing 36 guests. One of the dead is said to have been a Gabonese citizen. Gunmen stormed Le Campement Kangaba to the east of the capital, Bamako. It's a resort popular with Westerners. According to Mali's security minister, one of the assailants was able to escape after being injured. The incident is being treated as a terror attack. At first, we thought they were armed bandits, but we know the methods used by armed bandits. We are now thinking that this is a terrorist attack, and that's why the anti-terrorism prosecutor is already at the scene with his staff. Earlier this month, the US Embassy in Bamako warned of possible attacks on Western targets. In November 2015, at least 20 people were killed when gunmen took hostages at a hotel in the capital.
In an unprecedented move, Iran fires surface-to-surface missiles at ISIL positions in eastern Syria. Pro-Iranian TV says this shows the moment of impact. We have no way of independently verifying it. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard issued a statement saying it was in response to this. A rare dual attack in the Iranian capital earlier this month, for which ISIL claimed responsibility.
Yes, it's the first time that Iran has launched missiles into Syria, but there are wider geopolitical implications to this. Iran is sending the message that it can and will respond to any attack, and that it has the capability to do so. It's a move that's going to be closely watched by Saudi Arabia, the United States, and Israel.
And in another first, the US-led coalition confirmed that it shot down a Syrian fighter jet. The US military issued a statement where it said pro-Syrian forces attacked the US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces in a village southwest of Raqqa. They used the so-called de-escalation line with Russia to try to resolve the situation, but a jet came into the area soon after and dropped bombs near SDF positions, which is when a US F-18 jet shot it down, they say, in accordance with the rules of engagement and collective self-defense. The Russian Ministry of Defense says it's a step towards a dangerous escalation and is warning Washington not to use force against Syrian forces. It's unclear how this and Iran's move will play out in the long term, but it's yet another reminder of just how complicated the Syrian battlefield has become.
This is a Fox News alert. Moscow issuing a strong warning now to the U.S. Russian officials warning they will treat U.S.-led coalition planes and drones west of the Euphrates River as military targets. It's a threatening response to the U.S. after it shot down a Syrian fighter jet this weekend.
Russia's defense ministry says it's halted cooperation with the U.S. military in Syria.
One thing is when diplomats engage in a war of words, but today's development shows that it's gone far beyond that, with Russia deciding to end the single most important agreement that the U.S. and Russia has signed since Moscow was invited by the Assad regime to join the fight in Syria. Now, this agreement we're talking about here, it was signed back in October 2015, and what it does is it establishes a communication channel between U.S. and Russia forces operating in the airspace over Syria to prevent any sort of unwanted incidents. Now, as you can imagine, this airspace is very dense with so many different countries, so many different groups involved, and any sort of mistake and misinformation really can lead to unthinkable consequences. And in this case of the Syrian jet being shot down, well, according to the Russian military, the U.S. has not informed Russia of the decision to shoot down the Syrian jet through the existing communication channel, and at the same time, Russian jets was also operating in the area. And as a result of this incident, Russia has decided to halt all cooperation with the U.S. military in Syria. And this sort of military information blackout can potentially be a disaster waiting to happen.
So we're seeing a lot of these tensions building because, as we know, this whole region has been extremely complex with this mosaic of countries. Right? You've had Turkey, you've had Iran, you've had Iraq, you've had Syria, you've had Russia, you've had the Israel, you've had U.S., all with competing and vying and differing agendas, all in this very little patch of land. But it's happening at a crucial time. Eastern Syria, why is it strategically important? Well, it's that last sort of bit of territory that the Islamic State group, a lot of it's desert, that's true, still controls. And you could see it really on that map there. It's an oil-rich region, so it's obviously resource-rich, so a lot of people want to be able to have control of those resources. But more importantly, perhaps, or as importantly, you see Iraq. You don't see, right east of Iraq, Iran there. There are areas in that whole eastern region which could be seen as supply routes for ground forces, or Iranian militia, through Iraq, through Syria and into Lebanon to support its own proxy forces. So an extremely strategic area, a last patch, a last battleground, if you will, for the Islamic State group. So it's not a coincidence that we're seeing these incidents in this particular area and at this particular time.
Iran and China held a joint naval exercise in the Persian Gulf on June 18th. According to Iran's official IRNA news agency, Sunday's drill took place near the Strait of Hormuz, a strategic waterway through which nearly a third of all oil traded by sea passes through. It included 2 Chinese destroyers, a logistics ship, and a Chinese helicopter, all which arrived in Iran last week. The Iranian Navy assigned a warship, a helicopter, and 700 personnel members to the exercise. IRNA reported that the 2 navies had collaborated and exchanged information on combating piracy, defending trade fleets, and rescue operations. The naval drill comes at a time of heightened tensions between the Iranian and U.S. military. One day earlier, the U.S. Navy held a joint drill with Qatar in the Persian Gulf.
Reuters has reported that Qatar held military exercises with Turkish troops on Monday, demonstrating one of its few strong alliances after 2 weeks of ostracism and economic isolation imposed by neighbors, which accused the U.S. ally of supporting terrorism. Qatar's state-funded pan-Arab news channel Al Jazeera showed footage of a column of armored personnel carriers moving through the streets. It reported that additional Turkish troops have arrived in Qatar on Sunday for the exercises, although military sources in the region told Reuters the operation actually involved Turkish troops that were already present rather than new arrivals.
White House senior advisor Jared Kushner will travel to Israel and Ramallah in the West Bank this week. President Donald Trump has made it clear that working towards achieving a lasting peace agreement between the Israelis and Palestinians is a top priority for him, a White House official told CNN. Trump has asked some of his most trusted advisors to spearhead that effort, including son-in-law Kushner, an assistant to the president and special representative for international negotiations, Jason Greenblatt.
More than 65 million people were living as refugees in 2016. They left their homes because of persecution, violence, and human rights violations. The UN Refugee Agency says 10.3 million people were newly displaced last year. That includes nearly 7 million people displaced within their own countries, and nearly 3.5 million who fled abroad. Those numbers mean 20 people fled their homes every minute of 2016. More than half of all those refugees came from just one country, Syria. 5.5 million of its citizens became refugees last year. Next was Afghanistan, with 2.5 million refugees, followed by 1.4 million from South Sudan. More than half of the people displaced in 2016 were children. And for the 3rd year in a row, Turkey took in the largest number of refugees worldwide, 2.9 million people. 1.4 are in Pakistan. And in Lebanon, every 6th person is a refugee.
London police releasing brand new pictures from inside the charred Grenfell Tower in West London. They're quite graphic. The video showing in close detail how the fire devastated the 24-story building that had been home to some 600 people, 120 apartments in the building. It was ravaged in Wednesday's inferno. You have other photos that show the apartment was reduced to rubble and white ash, as you can see. 58 people confirmed or presumed dead in the fire. Officials believe the death toll will continue to rise. 2 British ministers saying today that the new exterior coating that was used in a renovation on Grenfell Tower may have been banned under UK building regulations. Police continue to investigate this.
I spoke to her and the very
last few words that she said to me was, "Please forgive me if I've said anything to upset you or hurt you. I don't think we're going to make it out of the building."
There aren't a lot of nail polish options specifically for Muslims in the US, but Orly's line of #halal paint is trying to make the beauty market more representative and inclusive. Some Muslims participate in a washing ritual before prayer, in which water must touch every part of the body. Unlike traditional nail polishes, the polishes in this line are porous, allowing the water through. The health benefits of breathable nail polish have been debated, but some say porous polish can promote good nail health. There are other beauty lines that focus on halal makeup, but the Orly Muslim Girl collaboration is different because it's a mainstream beauty brand catering to Muslims. The halal beauty industry is growing worldwide, and estimates show it will rake in more than $52 billion by 2025.
Right now, the deadly wildfires raging across Portugal, becoming the country's worst forest fire tragedy on record, and the European Union holding a moment of silence for dozens of victims as more than 1,000 firefighters try to bring the fast-moving flames under control. But the scorching hot temperatures, high winds, and smoke obviously complicating that battle.
Firefighters are working to contain a large blaze that is raging in southern Utah near the ski resort town of Brian Head. Almost 1,000 acres have been burned and about 750 people were evacuated. Emergency officials believe the fire to be human-caused and no injuries have been reported due to the blaze. High winds and record-setting temperatures are making it difficult to contain the inferno. Officials, though, said the fire did not progress overnight. The airspace has been restricted and planes are dropping flame retardants on the fire.
This is not out of the norm. I think what is disconcerting, there's a lot of things that are disconcerting about this fire, but what has us anxious in regards to the rest of the fire season is the elevation of the Brian Head fire.
Andrew Kraft, Fox News.
NASA announced more new planet candidates on Monday. The agency notes in a news release, NASA's Kepler Space Telescope team has released a mission catalog of planet candidates that introduces 219 new planet candidates, 10 of which are near Earth size and orbiting in their star's habitable zone, which is the range of distance from a star where liquid water could pool on the surface of a rocky planet. It adds, this is the most comprehensive and detailed catalog release of candidate exoplanets, which are planets outside our solar system, from Kepler's first 4 years of data. NASA explains, the Kepler Space Telescope hunts for planets by detecting the minuscule drop in a star's brightness that occurs when a planet crosses in front of it, called a transit.
On Monday, August 21st, it'll get dark during the day. For a few minutes, the moon will orbit perfectly between Earth and the sun and cause a total solar eclipse. It's been 38 years since this last happened in the continental US, and this one will probably create even more of a buzz. Millions of people in 14 states will see the sun blacked out, and that's before we count the millions of others who will travel to see it.
We don't have a precedent for this, so it's hard to predict.
Dr. Angela Speck directs the astronomy department at the University of Missouri. She's been investigating just how popular this once-in-a-lifetime eclipse could be.
12 million people live on the path of totality across the whole country. There are 4 times as many people live within 100 miles. There are 7 times as many people live within 200 miles.
Any other day, most of these spots would be off the beaten path. In August, they'll be the best place for millions of people to see the event. Nearby cities and towns are bracing for huge crowds. Experts will also join the temporary migrations. Eclipses aren't just a spectacle. They're a rare chance to investigate the sun, moon, and our own weather. So if you plan to travel, you might want to hurry. Hotel rooms in eclipse country are filling up and getting more expensive as August approaches.